What's up everyone, it's ENDYMION, and there's been some very interesting developments in the ever war against Sweet Baby and the bad actors who defend them. From a new article attempting to downplay the entire situation while refusing to say why it happened to begin with, as well as a new game that's being revealed that is developed by Sweet Baby, and that game, by the way, has some deep ties to the company, as I'll show you. And there's also private messages that are being leaked that kind of unravel the entire situation and much more. To begin, let's start with that article in question, which comes from TheVerge.com. It was written by Parish, who I already publicly combated her entire ideological stance, and I proved why she is clearly biased when it comes to how she covers video games. Parish attempted to goad users into proving that anything Sweet Baby has touched had any ideological push to it, which I answered, and I came with receipts. Of course, she has since locked her account or simply blocked me because having the truth be spoken by a games journalist these days is next to impossible, it seems. Anyway, don't harass this journal either, even though they are clearly not willing to give the same level of respect. But that's okay, because we can't stoop down to their level. But now let's look at Parish's article, which attempts to paint this entire situation in a light that benefits her and her friends. The article in question is titled "The Return of Gamergate is Smaller and Sadder." A group of gamers has mobilized a harassment campaign against a story consultant company, marginalized developers, and journalists in protest of what they see as forced diversity in gaming. Right out of the gate, she uses her biases that have been disproven time and again as she attempts to place the entire movement as being pathetic. Apparently, it's smaller and sadder this time around, which is funny because based on the numbers I see from Kerbrudis' Sweet Baby detected Steam tool and the amount of discussion online, this is anything but small. And I would argue this second coming of Gamergate is absolutely much bigger than before and better organized too. It also has many people in leading roles actually ensuring that the message is not contrived. From Mark Kern, or Grums as he's known on Twitter, Kerbrudis of course who made the tool, and I would even throw names like myself, Yellow Flash, It's a Gundam, and hell, even people like Critical Drinker or Sydney Watson has talked about this game journalism recently as well. So Ash's attempt to paint this entire situation as somehow less organized or smaller is just a flat out lie. But as you'll see, the further I go into this, she is not only lying, but deliberately refusing to add important information where it's clearly required. Just the way Ash words her article proves that she is attempting to steer the situation into the games industry's favor, so here's some of what she said, and I quote, "This growing group of people want to believe themselves a new incarnation of Gamergate, a harassment campaign started in 2014 that targeted women speaking out against misogyny in the video games industry. Back then, the harassers were cloaking their oftentimes violent harassment in the veneer of legitimate complaints. Social media gave a platform to those legitimate complaints while the games industry itself remained largely silent, allowing the movement to grow into a many-tentacled behemoth that bolstered the ranks of the alt-right movements that plagued our political landscape to this very day. But this time, instead of assembling under the false banner of ethics and journalism, this new campaign has chosen wokeism and Sweet Baby as the focus of their grievances. The result has been a wave of bigoted harassment targeting marginalized developers, journalists, and gamers. On social media, the employees of Sweet Baby are subject to a deluge of death threats. Developers who've spoken out in support of Sweet Baby are faced with similar treatment, with several making their accounts private in an attempt to stem the tide of abuse. The harassment campaign against Sweet Baby echoes the Gamergate movement of 10 years ago, once again targeting women, people of color, and journalists in the games industry. But this time, the events are playing out differently. Developers and gamers are pushing back, affirming that the kind of diversity these people rail against is here to stay. And after speaking with Sweet Baby employees and spending time with their detractors, it's clear the goals of this harassment campaign are largely a reactionary backlash against trends in video games that cannot be meaningfully stopped. The neo-Gamergate fever surrounding Sweet Baby started with a Brazilian Steam user by the name of Kerbrudis. In January, he created the Steam curation page called Sweet Baby Inc. Detected, which the page's description explains, is a tracker for games involved with Sweet Baby Inc. According to an interview with Kerbrudis in Geeks and Gamers, he believes Sweet Baby is responsible for forcing political agendas and DEI, the abbreviation for diversity, equity, and inclusion, into their games, end quote. I figure I stop there because there's already some huge misinformation that's being spread by The Verge's article already. Especially this part where Ash Parish says the Neo Gamergate fervor surrounding Sweet Baby started with a Brazilian Steam user by the name of Cabrutus. Right there, Ash is lying out of their teeth, because this did not start because of Cabrutus Rambo's Steam tool. Yes, he made the Steam Curator tool, but it was not brought to the attention of anyone really until Sweet Baby's Chris Kindred advocated to silence and ban Cabrutus for making the tool. Had Kindred not said what they said and attempted to use whatever dwindling influence they had to erase the tool and silence Cabrutus, none of this would have happened. And of course, Ash Parish omits this information, and actually, if you read the Verge article, there is not a single mention of Chris Kindred's name whatsoever. Which, I don't know about you, but if you're a journalist writing about a huge online movement, don't you think the reason why it's happening is pretty important information to include? But of course, if Ash Parish wrote that this started because someone in their echo chamber did this, then the entire article's validity and message would quickly unravel. Which is why, from the get-go, no matter what any journo attempts to say when it comes to the situation, the point is that the reason why it's happening is not because of the players. It was started by one of their own within the industry. And this alone makes their entire ideological stance begin on a bed of sand, and as the waves crash and their foundation slips away, these journalists cannot find a moral high ground because they were never on one to begin with. What's very interesting to me is that Ash Parish says she interviewed and talked to people within the Discord server, the same way that Kotaku writer did as well. Then Grums retweeted another user whose name is "You Read This Wrong." According to this user, they talked to Ash Parish in DMs about this article as they were allegedly interviewed for this Verge piece. Grum said, journalists tried to claim Gamergate 1 was only 10,000 gamers and no real impact. They are trying this again, except Cabrutus Rambo has 300,000 verified Steam accounts. They are desperate to downplay it. To which the person who talked to Ash Parish in the DM said this: I interviewed her. Her editors told her that giving an accurate timeline may make it seem as if their outlet is implying that the backlash was to some extent deserved, a stance they want to avoid. Very interesting, but you're probably wondering, well, that isn't enough to denounce what the Verge's Ash Parish said. It's simply a he said, she said situation, right? Well, that user then decided to reveal DMs between them and Ash, so let's read that now, shall we? Here's what Ash said: I hear you, and I understand that this is where we part, ideologically at least. I'll share the conversation I had with my editors about this because in preparation for my piece, I struggled with this particular bit and the conversation I had. Let's quickly stop for a second here. What Ash is referring to is she struggled with how she was going to word the section as to how Gamergate 2 started, which Ash knows it's because Sweet Baby's Chris Kindred attempted to silence and ban Cabrutus Rambo for their tool. And Ash knew stating this information in their piece would ruin their article. So they and the editors on The Verge struggled internally on how to word the article so that they were not in the wrong. Anyway, let's keep going. Cabrutus and his ilk have a grievance against Sweet Baby Inc. that is rooted in racism and misogyny, and has no basis in the reality of how video game development works. That's it, period. And when you get into the nitty-gritty of who did what when, not obviously the who's and what's that are necessary to explaining the story, that central premise gets lost. So right there, we have Ash Parish admitting in the DMs that if she writes that Gamergate 2 started because of the games industry attempting to silence Cabrutus, then the entire central premise is now cooked. Don't you love it when people lie and they get ousted like this? Admitting that what you're writing from the get-go is a deliberate lie, and you not only know it, but work to ensure that the lie is reinforced, is peak modern gaming journalism, my friends. But she doubles down in the DMs further where she says this: and me personally, I have to remember what my piece is ultimately about. Yeah, what she means by this is, sure, I know I'm lying and deliberately refusing to give crucial detail on my hit piece, but I need to remember that my article is about protecting Sweet Baby and the echo chamber that I'm in, so sorry, but I gotta move the goalpost to ensure that my truth is pushed. She finishes by saying, and it's not about providing a timeline of events, it's bigger than that. It's about explaining that the reason you're hearing about this company called Sweet Baby and Gamergate 2 getting thrown around is because there's a group of people who decided they hate woke video games and found a convenient scapegoat to target and a larger conspiracy to underpin it. So Ash kind of proves here that her entire Verge article is nothing but lies and deceits that are masked as virtueness in order to protect Sweet Baby. It's not about providing a time of events. I mean, you're a journalist for God's sakes. If there's anything more important about something like this, it's absolutely the timeline of what the hell happened to a T. I feel like that's pretty important, honestly. This entire situation where these journals at Kotaku or The Verge and others is just ridiculous to me. They know that they're in the wrong, and they can't defend their side without lying, so they just twist the story and hope enough people read the lies and then accept them as truths. This is like two people fighting and one person slaps the other person and then that person knocks them out. And then the person that gets knocked out is like, I'm the victim. Like, are we going to forget that none of this would have happened if you didn't slap the person first? I feel like the slapping is some pretty critical information for the future turnout of events because that's what's happening here. Let's not focus on why this happened. That's obviously not important because if we do, then everything we do in the future has no moral or logistical legs to stand on. So just ignore that and feel sorry for us. Yeah, that's not gonna happen. The Verge, like Kotaku and others, somehow managed to make their positions even worse with every piece that they release. If these people are the best the industry can send in order to defend them, then Gamergate 2 isn't only right, but it's just going to get bigger too. So when Parish tells you that this second coming is smaller and sadder, it's just deflection on their part. They are lying. They know that, obviously. They are totally aware that their side is absolutely in the wrong, but they're hoping that you're too stupid and misinformed to understand that. What's the old saying? You think you hate journalists, but you actually don't hate them enough? Something like that, yeah. It's also hilarious that in that Verge article, Ash uses the Alan Wake 2 director's deflection where they lied that Sweet Baby was integral to Saga Anderson, when she went from a white woman to a black woman all of a sudden between video games. Ash said in her article, for their work on Alan Wake 2, Belair said we were specifically called to look at Saga's story to look at how it's told. How the developers could better shore up aspects of herself, know her story reflects aspects of her identity, and essentially how to realize her as a fully human, fully authentic character. There you go again, Ash, lying through your teeth again. But don't worry, I'll do your job for you like always. Here's that excerpt from GameDeveloper.com where Kyle Rowley, the director of Alan Wake 2, openly admitted that Sweet Baby was influenced to Saga Anderson being race swapped. For creating Saga Anderson, the developers at Remedy took a different approach compared to the process behind other hero characters, resulting in a more organic creative collaboration across different disciplines at Remedy Entertainment and outside parties. Along with working with story and narrative consultant Kim Belair of Sweet Baby Inc. to refine the character voice and story arc. The key creatives of Alan Wake 2 also worked extensively with the actress playing Saga Anderson, Melanie Libbard, who offered suggestions and other insights that led to the Saga Anderson scene in the final game. I think that it took us a long time to find Saga, said Rowley on the character. It was an interesting process. We had an idea in our head of what that character could be, and then as the character evolves over time, being open to changing her based on input from the actors and from external sources really opened things up for us. I think that's important for us as a studio to be okay with because we don't do it very often for our characters, this idea of how to create a new hero character. So it is kind of a big moment for us, and it was definitely interesting for me going through that process. When it came to making Saga Anderson, it was about ensuring that one of the leads, a person of color who is core to the story, had a clear role of that complements Alan's side but also works independently as its own. Yet again, Parish omits critical information and attempts to paint the creation of a character that was absolutely influenced by the stain of the Sweet Baby from her article, but that's why I'm here, fellas. Because if you read this article and you had no other context, you come out thinking, wow, those gamers sure are racist bigots, aren't they? But it's clear that she's not only lying, but attempting to change the story to fit her agenda like always. There was also this part here where she says this about one of the co-founders and where they used to work. And Kim Belair, a writer and narrative designer who's worked at Ubisoft and Reflector Entertainment. That second company is going to become very important in this next story, so let's keep going. From thatparkplace.com, we have this article titled Reflector Entertainment and Bandai Namco's Unknown 9 Awakening added to Sweet Baby Inc. detected list. So about a day or two ago, there was this game called Unknown 9 Awakening. You probably haven't heard of it. I admit I didn't either until this all started happening. I'll play some footage of the game here while I talk about it. It looks honestly terrible, and that's putting it lightly. Like a mystical Tomb Raider-like game, but the graphics and everything looks muddy and horrible. I mean, you're seeing it on screen right now. Anyway, so this game got announced, people looked at it, and they saw all the hallmarks of a Sweet Baby product. And users just wanted to ask in the official forums if Sweet Baby was involved. One user tweeted their ban from the forums where it says this: "You have been banned from Unknown 9 Awakening Community Hub by an Unknown 9 Awakening developer for your post and general discussions. While this ban is active, you will not be able to post or comment. This is a permanent ban." And as you can see, they just said Sweet Baby and boom, they got thrown out immediately. So obviously, these bans weren't just a one and done sort of thing, because there were multiple users posting to Twitter saying that they got banned for asking the exact same question. So why is this happening? Well, like always, people began to dig deeper, and Unknown 9, in case you're wondering what it's about according to their website, Unknown 9 is an occult conspiracy thriller following a secret society, the Leap Year Society, as they search the world seeking 9 immortals who possess the sum total of human knowledge. The initial product slate includes a comic book published by Dark Horse Comics and a podcast, with more to come in the form of a novel trilogy, a mobile game, a console video game, a feature film, and a TV series. Wow, okay, so they are really trying to turn this story into a full-blown Game of Thrones level thing. I'll be honest, the premise doesn't sound too bad. I mean, immortal beings who know everything about the entirety of humanity. But it gets sour from here, as it turns out the reason why the game's forums are banning people are because, well, just look at who's attached to this. If you look down in the right corner here, you'll see two of the most prominent people working in this company called Reflector. One is Kim Belair, who's the story architect at Sweet Baby. She's the co-founder of Sweet Baby as well, in case you didn't know. And above her is David Bedard, who is apparently brand content manager at Reflector. But if you look deeper, David Bedard is actually the other co-founder of Sweet Baby as well. So this Unknown 9 Awakening game, which, let's be real, is a terrible name and really generic too, is being spearheaded and managed by not one, but both co-founders of Sweet Baby. So there really isn't any reason to even think that they aren't involved. They are literally woven into the DNA of this game. The main character is someone called Haruna, who is clearly being portrayed by Anya Charlatra. You probably know her from the god-awful The Witcher Netflix series where she plays Yennefer. I have no problem with her as an actor. She isn't responsible for why The Witcher sucks. That show blows because of its writers and producers. And seeing that Anya is a part of this, it's yet again another case of the writers, or I guess content managers too, that are involved with this sort of thing. What's weird is that we're kinda seeing the Sweet Baby curse when it comes to female characters already. Objectively, Anya is an attractive woman, yet in some images from this game, she looks off? Like here, she looks like she's suffering from a stroke, as both eyes seem to go in different directions. Or this really bizarre concept art image where whoever did this managed to give Anya fetal alcohol syndrome or something? Why can't they just make the characters look like the actors in a one-to-one way? How do you take an attractive woman like this and turn her into Greta Thunberg in a hood? Why do these companies hate attractive women so much? But what's happening here with Unknown 9 is just going to be the standard going forward. These companies can attempt to hide their involvement or the people's names, but at this point, all it takes is a single image of a game for people to realize that there's some shenanigans going on. If I took one look at Unknown 9 without knowing Sweet Baby was involved, but I saw these images, I wouldn't even need to know if they were involved because I could already tell. It's like that meme where the two guys are like, Western game devs have been here, and the other guy says, how can you tell? And the guy says ugly women. It's just become a surefire way of knowing that these people are involved somehow. Like here's an image from Sile where you got 3 characters on screen from 3 different games. You got Halo Infinite in the top left, Vampire the Masquerade bottom left, and then the South Korean game on the right, which is called Vindictus Defying Fate. You can just tell right here which games were made by Western developers. Because only one of these 3 women actually looks like an actual woman, the other 2 look like a vague in-between of genders instead. I mean, just look at some footage here of Vindictus Defying Fate in action. South Korea, unsurprisingly, actually makes their characters look attractive and it shows. A character like this would never exist within a Sweet Baby made product. Every character is wrapped up like a burrito and uglified in the name of social justice. But they call it the Sweet Baby Kiss of Death for a reason, since reports are now showing that Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League has underperformed even when compared to Gotham Knights, which also underperformed too. Both of those games, by the way, had Sweet Baby involved, and the fact it was 60% less in sales when compared to Guardians of the Galaxy is really bad, when Guardians was a certified flop as well. So this should paint the picture that when you have Sweet Baby involved, your games fail critically and commercially too. And need I remind you, when Gotham Knights released, no one really knew of Sweet Baby either, and even then the response to that game was terrible. And this is the future that's awaiting many of these current and future games like Unknown 9. When woke lunacy is encoded into the very DNA of your product, it's obviously impossible to remove it. And I would be amazed if Unknown 9 ends up being anything but a flop when it releases. And of course, since the Game Developer Conference is happening soon, or GDC for short, I said a few vids back they would absolutely be talking about Gamergate 2 to some capacity, and well, looks like I was right, unfortunately. They're having a session there called So You've Been Cancelled, Now What? And it'll last 1 hour during GDC. It'll be hosted by Jay Lin, who's apparently a part of Feminist Frequency, yes, the very same that is owned and operated by Anita Sarkeesian. Already, these industry grifters who profit off of making problems within the games industry are offering the same solutions like they always do. I'm halfway convinced the existence of a Sweet Baby and others like them just exists in order to deliberately make products worse on purpose. So they can then funnel these companies who fall victim to their DEI practices into conveniently placed consulting groups that help them deal with their failures, only for them to think that next time will be better. Then they make another woke disaster, then get consulted on their failure, and the cycle just repeats. It's like a doctor that's purposely making you sick and then offering you the cure in the same facility. It's just crazy how these groups even begin to exist. And I think to end, it would be fun to read one of the comments that Parish, who wrote that Verge article, left in the Discord server that Kerbutus and the other anti-Sweet Baby bros were in. Ash said, and I quote, "I hope those of y'all with an open mind realize that Sweet Baby is not your enemy. I hope you realize that woke is also not your enemy and that your group's continued crusade against woke makes you look bigoted. I hope you understand that non-sexualized depictions of women, the inclusion of people of color, and queer people in the games themselves making them, and writing about them is a net positive for gaming, something to be celebrated, not memed. I hope more of you, like you've done here, actually talk to people you disagree with. What makes me sad is that this is a pattern of behavior that can really destroy people's lives. You have this group of like-minded people assembled in common cause. And while I believe you when you say you're going to clean up your act, there will be those of you who don't want to clean up their act. And so they'll get pushed into private discords with more like-minded folks who will feel like they have more license or freedom to let their worst impulses fly. And they'll get even more on the fringe. The things they talk about will get worse and worse until the alienation is complete. They'll lose friends, families, jobs, and health because nobody wants to be around them for this kind of behavior. It happened with Gamergate and QAnon and it'll happen again." End quote. Dear Parish, you can attempt to gaslight people into feeling sorry for you or the people you're defending, but the truth is simply that you brought this upon yourselves. Nobody asked for Gamergate 2, your people caused it to happen. And your side also officially named it Gamergate 2, when your side went out of their way to get Homeland Security of all things involved. And they ended up using their branch organization called Take This to officially deem this entire online movement as Gamergate 2. This is not the players' fault. The players just want good games that don't talk down to them and value their time and money. But since so many people on your side refuse to accept this, then this movement will just continue to grow. Unknown 9 Awakening is likely going to flop now, if not because it looks like garbage already, graphically it looks really bad, or the fact it just seems janky to play, then simply because the people who hate the consumers are spearheading that game. This will continue to happen for as long as it has to until the rot is weeded out and removed. And you can gaslight people and call them whatever you want, but ultimately, as I've said previously, the players do not work for you. You and your side work for them, and without the players, your industry and the games you so desperately want to push in your agenda will not succeed, and they will result in job losses and studio closures. This is not because of hateful bigotry or alt-right groups thinking despite you so desperately wanting it to be that, but is simply because the consumer base is tired of being belittled, talked down to, and ridiculed for not wanting what you're selling. So you can continue to deflect and protect all you want, but just know that the players out there do not have to save you or these games. And that realization scares the crap out of you because you know in the end, no matter what you say or what information you omit, that people like myself and others will keep you all accountable whether you like it or not. And we have the power in the end anyway. This industry makes billions because of the players, and it's within our right to withhold that money if we so choose. So please, go ahead, make another 10 Unknown 9-like games, go ruin another franchise or studio like Rocksteady, or the dozens of others you already have. We just won't buy your products and we will watch you all fall to ruin. When you know that all you need to do is respect the people you hate for simply not thinking the same way you do. We have all the time in the world, so this Gamergate 2 situation can go on for years. We'll see what wins in the end, the players or the woke studios who hate us. I have a feeling we both know the end result of this, but as always, let me know what you think in the comments, and thank you for watching. Like, subscribe, and share the video if you enjoyed it, and thanks to my patrons as well. Have a wonderful day, go enjoy some good video games, and I'll see you in the next one.